Waco, Texas. A craftsman bungalow on a residential street. Summer, 1923. Charles Armstrong is 7 years old. His father and his older brothers have just finished building a room across the entire back of the house. They call it the sleeping porch. It has windows all the way around, one after another, the full width of the house. There is no insulation. There are no solid walls on three sides. That is the point. At 9 o'clock on a July evening, the interior of the bungalow is still holding the heat it absorbed at 2 in the afternoon. The kitchen, where his mother cooked supper on a wood-burning stove at 5, will not cool down until after midnight. The bedrooms face south. The plaster walls radiate. The ceiling is low. The sleeping porch faces the backyard. The screens are in. The windows are open, all of them. Whatever moves across central Texas after sundown moves through that room. On bad nights it is not much. On good nights it is enough to bring the temperature down 10 degrees below what the bedroom is holding. The family sleeps together on that porch from May through September. The father, the mother, the boys. The mattresses go out when the heat arrives and come back in when the nights turn cool. 2 blocks away, in a smaller house without a porch, a family sleeps with the windows open and a fan running on a chair. They do not have the space to build a porch. They do not own the house. What Charles Armstrong's father built in a weekend with his sons, the room that would hold the family through 5 months of Texas summer, required 3 things that not every household had: ownership, lumber, and a backyard to extend into. 400 miles northeast, in a Memphis shotgun house, a black family has a different arrangement. There is no sleeping porch. There is no backyard. There is a narrow lot in a house that runs straight through, room after room, front to back. On the hottest nights the family sleeps on the front porch, the only outdoor space they have. The porch is 6 feet from the street. The street holds the heat until 2 in the morning. What was the sleeping porch, and who had one? The sleeping porch did not begin as a cooling strategy. It began as medicine. In 1884, a physician named Edward Livingston Trudeau opened a sanatorium in the Adirondack Mountains at Saranac Lake, New York, the first tuberculosis treatment facility in the United States. Tuberculosis was the leading cause of death in America. The treatment was air. Patients lay on long screen porches, they called them cure porches, wrapped in blankets, breathing cold mountain air for hours. The medical theory was that fresh outdoor air, moving across the lungs, could halt the disease. The cure porch became the emblem of the sanatorium movement, row after row of iron beds on open porches, patients sleeping outside in every season, even in winter. The idea traveled from the sanatorium to the home. By the early 1900s, magazines like Country Life in America were publishing instructions for building sleeping porches, screened outdoor rooms where the whole family could sleep in fresh air. A 1909 article declared that outdoor sleeping had become too widespread to be dismissed as a passing fashion. The tuberculosis connection was the engine. In 1908, a Brooklyn Public Health Committee estimated that 1 in 10 deaths in the borough was caused by TB. A family that built a sleeping porch was not indulging a preference. They were protecting their children's lungs. But here is the thing the fresh air movement did not say out loud: the sleeping porch also solved a heat problem that no one had a better answer for. In a house without air conditioning, without even an electric fan, and the electric fan would not become a common household object until the 1920s, the interior bedroom on a July night was a heat trap. Plaster walls radiated what they had absorbed all day. The ceiling held the heat. The air did not move. The sleeping porch, screened on 3 sides, with windows that opened the room to whatever breeze existed, was the coolest space in the house. It was medicine and it was survival, and for 2 generations those 2 facts lived together without anyone needing to separate them. What did the sleeping porch look like, and what did it take to build one? Before we continue, if this kind of documentation is what you have been looking for, consider subscribing. Every video on this channel goes into one specific element of American life in the heat before air conditioning came home: the fan, the iceman, the movie theater at 9 o'clock, the front stoop at midnight, the Sears catalog in October, the window unit arriving next door, and what each of these things meant for the specific people who organized their summers around them. Not nostalgia for the front porch. The documented physical reality of a heat problem that some households managed with a fan and a wet sheet and others managed by not surviving the heat wave. The sleeping porch gave American families one thing the sealed bedroom could not produce: moving air across a sleeping body on a July night, and it gave it to everyone in the household at once, in one room, under the same sky. And if you lived this, or your family did, the sleeping porch, the fire escape, the rooftop, the backyard mattress, put it in the comments. Did your family have a sleeping porch, or did you sleep outside in summer? On the porch, the fire escape, the lawn, the roof. What do you remember about the sounds, the air, the people next to you? Next week, the Iceman. The block of ice that arrived at the back door 3 times a week, the ice box it went into, and the summer cooling infrastructure that the electric refrigerator quietly ended. Back to the bungalow. The Sears catalog answered the question. Starting in 1908, Sears, Roebuck and Company sold entire houses by mail, more than 70,000 of them over 3 decades, in some 370 designs. A number of those designs included a sleeping porch as a standard feature. The Auburn, model number 264P176, offered in 1916, had a sleeping porch on the second floor. The Magnolia, a grand 3-story house offered from 1918 to 1922, included sleeping porches and a porte-cochere. The Alhambra, a Spanish Revival design first offered in 1918, came with a screened sleeping porch. You ordered the house from the catalog. The lumber, the hardware, the window frames, the screen panels arrived by railroad boxcar. You built it or you hired someone to build it. The competitor, Aladdin Homes out of Bay City, Michigan, went further. In 1917, Aladdin offered 2 prefabricated sleeping porch additions in its catalog, bolt-on structures you could attach to an existing house. The larger model, number 5, 2 stories, 10 feet by 6, was big enough on the upper floor for a double bed, 2 twins, or 3 cots. It cost $100, including screens and paint. $100 in 1917 was roughly 3 weeks' wages for a factory worker. That price tells you something. The sleeping porch was not a luxury. It was not a screened gazebo for the wealthy. It was a practical response to a thermal problem that every household faced and that the house itself, the sealed bedroom, the plaster wall, the low ceiling, made worse. The Sears catalog was not selling charm. It was selling a room that did what the bedroom could not do on a July night, let the air through. But the catalog was selling to people who could buy a house. Or who already owned one with a yard to expand into. Charles Armstrong's father built a sleeping porch because he had a house and a backyard and sons who could swing a hammer. The family 2 blocks away, renting a house without a yard, could not build one. The family in the Memphis Shotgun House, on a narrow lot 6 feet from the street, could not build one. The sleeping porch required private property, and private property in America was not distributed evenly. What the Sears catalog was selling was available to the people the housing market had already decided could buy. What happened at night in a tenement building where there was no porch, no backyard, and no breeze? The sleeping porch solved the problem of sleeping in a hot house. The summer kitchen solved the problem of the hothouse itself, or rather, the problem of making it hotter. In a farmhouse in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, in the 1890s, the main kitchen had a cast-iron cookstove. That stove, burning wood or coal, was the center of household life for 8 months of the year. It heated the house in winter. It cooked 3 meals a day. It heated water for washing. But from June through September, the cookstove was an enemy. A cast-iron stove burning wood in a closed room in July raised the kitchen temperature to well above 100 degrees. The heat spread through the house. It rose through the ceiling into the bedrooms above. The house that the stove warmed in January, the stove destroyed in July. The solution was old and practical, a separate building. The summer kitchen, sometimes called the wash house or the cook house, was a small, usually rectangular structure, often gable-roofed, built a few yards from the main house. It was typically 150 to 250 square feet. It had a stove, a work table, sometimes a sink if the farm had a pump. In the Pennsylvania German communities where the practice was strongest, the summer kitchen was where the heaviest work happened in the hot months: the canning, the butchering, the apple butter making, the sausage work. You moved the heat out of the house by moving the fire out of the house. The practice was not only Pennsylvanian. In the American South, detached kitchens had been standard on farms and plantations since the 18th century. Heat was one reason. Fire risk was another. A kitchen fire in a detached building did not burn the house. But in the South, the detached kitchen carried a different meaning. On plantations, the kitchen where enslaved cooks worked was separated from the main house deliberately. The people who cooked did not eat in the dining room. They did not sleep in the bedrooms. They lived in or near the kitchen building, sleeping upstairs above the hearth in winter, outside in summer. The detached kitchen in the South was an instrument of heat management and an instrument of racial separation. Both things were true at the same time, and the architectural form did not distinguish between them. The summer kitchen declined with two changes. Rural electrification, which accelerated through the 1930s, brought electric stoves that radiated less heat. And the gas range, spreading through urban and suburban kitchens in the same decades, did the same. When the stove stopped being a furnace, the reason to banish it to a separate building weakened. By the end of the Depression, the summer kitchen was disappearing from American rural life. The buildings remained, repurposed as toolsheds, workshops, storage rooms, but the cooking fires that had given them their reason no longer burned in them. What did the sleeping porch and the summer kitchen have in common, and what do they tell us about what American houses were designed to do before mechanical cooling made design irrelevant? The sleeping porch and the summer kitchen were not separate ideas. They were two sides of the same principle. The American house before air conditioning was not a sealed container. It was a permeable structure, designed to breathe, designed to open, designed to let the heat out and the air in. Look at the Craftsman bungalow that Sears was selling in 1918. Deep eaves to shade the walls. A wide front porch to shade the entrance. High ceilings, 9 feet, sometimes 10, because heat rises and a high ceiling keeps it above your head. Windows on opposite walls for cross-ventilation, because the only way to cool a room without a machine was to let the wind through. And the sleeping porch at the back, the room that was almost outside, the room that admitted the night air through every surface. These were not decorative choices. They were engineering. Every element of the pre-AC American house addressed the same problem: how to make a structure habitable in summer without mechanical cooling. The wide porch shaded the wall that would otherwise absorb afternoon sun and radiated into the rooms until midnight. The high ceiling created a stratification: hot air above, cooler air below, at the level where people sat and slept. The cross-ventilation required windows placed with precision. If both windows faced the same direction, no air moved. If they faced opposite directions, the breeze pulled through. The sleeping porch was the most radical expression of this principle. A room with 3 screened walls was not a room in the way a bedroom was a room. It was a membrane. It separated the sleeper from the insects and the rain, but not from the air, not from the temperature, not from the sounds of the neighborhood at night. On the sleeping porch you heard the dogs and the crickets and the train at 2 in the morning. You felt the temperature drop at 3. You woke up wet with dew if the wind shifted and the screens did not stop the mist. You were inside the house and you were outside the house. That was the design. And this is what air conditioning ended. Not just the heat. The permeability. The post-war ranch house, the tract home that spread across American suburbia in the late 1940s and 1950s, was designed for a machine. Low ceilings, because the machine cooled from above and a high ceiling wasted energy. Small windows, because the machine worked better in a sealed space and a large window admitted heat. No sleeping porch, because the machine made the bedroom cold enough to sleep in. No summer kitchen, because the machine made the kitchen tolerable. The house stopped breathing. The windows closed. The porch shrank and then disappeared. And the family that had slept together on the sleeping porch from May through September, the mother, the father, the children, sometimes the grandmother on the cot nearest the screen, retreated into separate bedrooms, each with its own vent in the ceiling, each sealed from the night air, each private. What happened on a sleeping porch at night that could not happen in a sealed bedroom? Mary Sendin remembered the sleeping porch in Waco as the coolest, most comfortable place in the house. Her parents slept there because it was next to the kitchen and they got up early. What she did not say, because it did not need saying, was that the family arranged itself on that porch according to a logic that no bedroom demanded. The parents took the position nearest the kitchen door. The children took the cots along the screen wall. The grandmother, if she was there, took the cot nearest the best air. No one assigned these positions. The porch assigned them. You slept where the air was and where your role in the household put you. In a sealed bedroom, the family separated. Each person had a room. Each room had a door. The door closed and the world behind it was private. On the sleeping porch, nothing was private. You heard your father turn over at 1 in the morning. You heard your mother get up for water at 2. You heard your little brother's breathing change when the temperature dropped at 3 and the breeze came through. You heard the neighborhood, the dog 3 houses down, the screen door on the house behind you, the car on the highway a quarter-mile away. You were not in a room. You were in the night, with a screen between you and it. Kathy Hartman, a Texas historian, remembered that her parents took the screen porch at the back of the house. She and her sister had to improvise. They took an old mattress outside in front of the house and slept there through the summer. They dealt with mosquitoes. They worried about blister bugs and scorpions and snakes. And they had, she remembered, the magnificent view of the Milky Way. That was the exchange. The sleeping porch, or the mattress on the front lawn, or the fire escape, or the park, gave you the heat and the insects and the sounds and the vulnerability of being outdoors. And it gave you the sky. The sealed bedroom with the window unit gave you the cold and the silence and the privacy. It did not give you the sky. No one chose the sleeping porch because they preferred discomfort. They slept outside because the house had failed them. The brick absorbed the sun all day and the plaster held it all night, and the bedroom at 10 o'clock was hotter than the yard. The porch was the solution the house could offer when the house itself was the problem. And the solution worked, not perfectly, not comfortably, but enough to sleep, and in working, it produced something no one had planned, a family sleeping together in one open room, hearing each other breathe, hearing the night, waking with the light. When did the sleeping porch disappear, and what was left of it by 1960? In New York City at the turn of the century, 2 out of every 3 residents lived in tenement buildings. The tenement had no sleeping porch. It had no backyard. The bedrooms, if you could call them bedrooms, were interior rooms, sometimes without a window. The Tenement House Act of 1901, passed in response to decades of disease and heat death, required that every habitable room have a window. Before that law, people slept in rooms that had no air at all. On the hottest nights, the tenements emptied upward and outward. Families carried mattresses and blankets to the roof. They laid children on fire escapes 3 and 4 stories above the street. They walked to the piers along the East River and the Hudson and slept on the wooden planking. They went to the parks. On August 12, 1922, some 6,000 people slept in Central Park, with hundreds of babies sleeping in their carriages while the parents lay on the grass nearby. The police, who normally enforced the ban on sleeping in parks, suspended it during heat emergencies. The city had no other answer. The death tolls made the distinction between the sleeping porch and the fire escape lethal. The heat wave that struck New York in August 1896 killed an estimated 1,500 people in 10 days. The dead were concentrated in the tenement districts of the Lower East Side, the neighborhoods with the densest housing, the fewest trees, the least air. Historian Edward Cohn has documented that this 10-day emergency killed more people than the New York City draft riots and the Great Chicago Fire combined. Theodore Roosevelt, then the city's police commissioner, wrote that the death rate had tripled to approach the ratio of a cholera epidemic. These were the people who did not have a sleeping porch. They did not have a Sears catalog bungalow with a screened room at the back. They did not have a backyard or a lawn or a grandmother's farmhouse in Pennsylvania with a summer kitchen and a shade tree. They had an interior room on the 4th floor of a brick building on a street where the buildings held the heat until 2 in the morning, and they had the roof and the fire escape in the park. The roof was not a sleeping porch. The fire escape was not a sleeping porch. People fell from both and died. Children rolled off fire escapes in their sleep. The sleeping porch was a middle-class solution to a universal problem, and the problem was not distributed equally. And here is the line that runs from 1896 to now. The neighborhoods where the tenement heat deaths were concentrated, the Lower East Side, the neighborhoods that the Homeowners Loan Corporation would grade D on its redlining maps in the 1930s, are measurably hotter today. Researchers have documented that formerly redlined neighborhoods across 108 American cities average about 2.5 degrees Celsius warmer than the neighborhoods that were graded A. They have about 23% tree canopy where the A-graded neighborhoods have 43%. The geography of heat in American cities was set a century ago. The sleeping porch was available to the people the geography had already favored. What happened to the sleeping porch when the window unit arrived? The window unit arrived in American homes in significant numbers after 1951. Prices dropped. Consumer credit expanded. The Sears catalog that had once sold sleeping porches now sold window air conditioners. By 1955, fewer than 2% of American homes had any form of air conditioning. By 1960, the number was climbing. By 1965, air conditioning was no longer a luxury in the South. Texas, in 1966, became the first state where more than half of all homes had it. And the sleeping porch began to disappear, not by demolition, but by enclosure. Across the country, homeowners hired contractors to remove the screens, install glass windows, add insulation, and convert the sleeping porch to a year-round room. What had been an open space with 3 screen walls became a sunroom, a den, a sewing room, a bedroom. In Brooklyn, where space was expensive and sleeping porches had served dense rowhouse neighborhoods, the conversions were especially common. The porch became square footage. The screens that had let the air through were replaced by glass that kept the cold in. The logic was simple and it was correct. If you had a window unit in the bedroom, you did not need the sleeping porch. The machine produced the condition the porch had been designed to approximate, cool air across a sleeping body, and it produced it better, more reliably, without the mosquitoes and the rain and the dew and the 3 a.m. freight train. The porch had been the best available answer to a problem. The window unit was a better answer. The porch lost its reason. At the same time, new houses stopped including sleeping porches entirely. The post-war ranch house, the dominant American residential form from the late 1940s through the 1960s, had no porch at the back. It had low ceilings. It had small windows. It was designed from the foundation for mechanical cooling. The architecture of the American house shifted from passive to active, from a structure that managed heat through openings and airflow to a structure that sealed itself and ran a machine. The sleeping porch was the last room in the American house that was open to the weather. When it closed, the house closed. Historian Raymond Arsenault has written that air conditioning changed the Southern way of life, influencing everything from architecture to sleeping habits. He concluded that General Electric proved a more devastating invader than General Sherman. That is not a joke about comfort. It is a statement about the scale of what changed when the American house stopped being open to the night. What was left of the sleeping porch by the time the window unit had done its work? The air conditioner saved lives. That is not a small thing, and this channel does not minimize it. Researchers have documented that the spread of residential air conditioning accounts for essentially the entire decline in American heat-related mortality over the 20th century. They estimate that roughly 20,000 fewer Americans die from heat each year than would die if the conditions before 1960 still prevailed. The window unit in the bedroom was not a convenience. For the people in the brick tenement, in the shotgun house, in the 4th floor walk-up without cross-ventilation, the window unit was the difference between a bad night and a dangerous one. Between a child on a fire escape and a child in a cooled room. Between a heat wave survived and one that was not. What the sleeping porch could not do, the machine did. It cooled the air. It filtered it. It ran all night. It did not depend on the wind. It did not admit the rain or the mosquitoes or the sound of the freight train. It produced, reliably and on demand, the condition that the porch had approximated on good nights and failed to produce on bad ones. But here is what the machine did not replace. The machine did not replace the family sleeping together in one room. It did not replace the sound of the crickets coming through the screen at midnight. It did not replace the temperature drop at 3 in the morning that you felt on your face because the screen was 6 inches from your pillow. It did not replace the sky. The house that had specialized its rooms, parlor, kitchen, bedroom, had, on the sleeping porch, brought the family back together. Parents and children and sometimes grandparents lay down in one open space every night from May to September. They heard each other. They were aware of each other through the night. The sealed bedroom separated them again. Each person to a room. Each room to a vent. Each vent to a compressor. The family that had slept under the same sky retreated behind separate doors. The summer kitchen was already gone. The gas range and the electric stove had ended it by the 1930s. The sleeping porch lasted longer. It survived because the heat problem it addressed was harder to solve than the cooking heat problem. But by the mid-1960s, in most of the country, the sleeping porch was either enclosed or abandoned. The screens came down. The glass went up. The windows closed. And 20,000 people a year did not die who would have died otherwise. That is the exchange. That is what the window unit was. Not a comfort device. A life-saving machine that, in the act of saving lives, closed the last room in the American house that was open to the world. There is a woman in Waco in 1963. She is the granddaughter of a man who built a sleeping porch across the back of a craftsman bungalow in 1923. She lives in a ranch house on the south side of the city. The house has a window unit in the bedroom and one in the living room. On a Tuesday evening in July, she does not carry a mattress outside. She does not sleep on the porch, there is no porch. She does not wet a sheet and hang it in the window. She turns the dial on the window unit and the machine begins to hum and the bedroom temperature drops to 72 degrees and she closes the window and the curtains and goes to sleep. She sleeps well. She sleeps safely. She sleeps alone in a sealed room. She does not hear the crickets. She does not feel the temperature drop at 3 in the morning. She does not smell the grass. She does not know that her grandfather, the man who built the sleeping porch with his sons, slept for 30 summers in a room with no solid wall between him and the night, and that the room held his wife and his children and sometimes his mother, and that at dawn the light came through the screen and woke them all at the same moment, and that the first thing they heard was the mockingbird in the pecan tree. The sleeping porch is gone. In a few houses it survives, enclosed, glassed in, used as a sunroom or a storage room, the screens replaced, the air sealed out. The summer kitchen is a tool shed, if it is still standing. The architecture that Americans built to manage the heat, the deep eaves, the high ceilings, the cross ventilation, the open porch, the separate kitchen, has been replaced by the architecture of the machine, the sealed box, the low ceiling, the small window, the compressor on the concrete pad beside the foundation. The machine saved 20,000 lives a year. The machine made Phoenix habitable and Houston a metropolis and the Sun Belt a population destination. The machine ended the fire escape sleeping and the park sleeping and the rooftop sleeping that killed people when they rolled off in the dark. The machine was not optional. The machine was necessary. And the machine ended the last space in the American house where the family lay down together under the sky, where the screen was the only wall between the sleeper and the night, where the sound of the neighborhood came through with the breeze, and where the first light of morning woke everyone at once. The sleeping porch was the room the heat built. The cold took it apart, screen by screen, house by house, and gave back nothing in its place except the silence of a sealed room and a machine that hums. If this channel is going to keep documenting what American life in the heat was and what it meant to the people who managed it, subscribe. There are more fans, more ice boxes, more Tuesday nights at the Lowe's State, more Sears catalogs open to page 312, and more window units arriving through one neighbor's window and changing what the whole floor thought about the following October. The sleeping porch gave American families one thing the sealed bedroom could not produce, moving air across a sleeping body on a July night, and it gave it to everyone in the household at once, in one room, under the same sky. That room is gone now. The cold came home. And if you have a summer, a sleeping porch, a fire escape, a rooftop, a mattress on the lawn, a grandmother who told you about sleeping outside when she was a girl, put it in the comments. Did your family have a sleeping porch, or did you sleep outside in summer? What do you remember about the sounds, the air, the people beside you, and the moment the light woke you up? Next week, the Iceman. The block of ice that arrived at the back door 3 times a week, the ice box it went into, and the summer cooling infrastructure that the electric refrigerator quietly ended. The sleeping porch on the bungalow in Waco is still there. The screens are gone. The windows are glass. It is a sewing room now. Nobody sleeps in it. The pecan tree is still in the backyard. The mockingbird is still in the pecan tree. There is no one on the porch to hear it.